Hi, I'm Dale Holliday coming to you from Corvallis, Oregon in the bountiful Willamette Valley. Welcome to my show, Valley Views, a forum for sharing relevant topics relating to people and issues in the Willamette region. Hi folks, thanks for joining me today. In today's show, I'd like to share with you some reflections and some observations I've made during this last political campaign season. As you may or may not know, I did serve as a campaign manager for my husband, Max Mania, who ran for Benton County Commissioner. And even though it was a local, small regional race, not many people can say that they've been a campaign manager. It is a slice of life. It is an opportunity to observe people in a way that most people can't say they have done. And even on a local level, I was not paid for doing this. I mean, it was something that I did because I believed in Max and I knew he'd be a good commissioner. But it's just as hard work whether you're doing it on a local level or on a national level. Now, it's not as much work as doing it on a national level, but it's hard work when you're doing your job right. That experience put me in a position to hear people's perceptions of our political process and the act of voting. And it included their perceptions and emotions and misconceptions around voting. And I'm sorry to say this, but I was often dismayed by what I heard as far as people's opinions and perceptions about this. But I'd like to share with you a little window into my life as to what I did observe during that time. So to set the stage, I'd like to first say that some of you may know, I am a black woman, and I'm a black woman who knows history. And I'm keenly aware that voting for African Americans was a hard-fought battle. People died for this right to vote, and mostly black people died, but some white folks died too, because they were doing the right thing. And today, as many of you know, we have a huge efforts on many fronts to roll back that achievement by purging voter rolls of people of color and poor people. And the white folks in power, I'll say white folks, folks in power, usually in this country they're white, they are very much in favor of this because they want to retain their power and keep the status quo. Given my history, given who I am, I had it drilled into me at an early age not to take the vote for granted, as I'm figuring most African Americans have had that message in their life as well. But that said, it's always disgusted me how we have such a low voter turnout here in the U.S. Just generally speaking, national level, mid-range, local levels. I'm not going to throw a bunch of statistics at you, but we seem to crow about it when there's a 50% or more turnout for elections, when we get that much of a turnout. And much of the time it's lower than that. As you know, some local elections, it's even worse. Too many local elections and regional elections even feature unopposed candidates. It's just kind of a cakewalk into the position. Lack of voting is a problem. And another problem are the games that the two-party system perpetuates, like blocking out third-party independent candidates by using a variety of tried and true tricks. Folks, some of you don't want to hear this, but the Democrats are just as guilty as the Republicans for doing this. Now, there are individuals within parties that want to do the right thing, and they are, that is truly their goal. But the party system itself, it just generates a mind of its own. The party will do whatever it needs to do to survive, no matter what. So I'd like to get back to the topic of the things I observed and heard from potential voters while I was out there working a campaign. I can split them into two camps. Okay, this is my own observations. And the two camps are, the first are the people that are uninformed voters who make choices for sentimental reasons. The second camp are people of all ages who just don't vote, okay? for a variety of reasons I'll get into in a bit. These are usually white. They're usually, I'd say, often male. Typically young, but not always. And like I said, this is not a scientific study. I'm not purporting to have a statistical significance with what I'm about to say, but these are some of my observations. So the first group that I've mentioned are the uninformed voters who make choices for sentimental reasons. These are some of the things I've heard about why people have voted for a particular candidate. Well, she's my friend, or he's my friend. And I even went as far, I heard a couple of people, especially in this last campaign, go as far as to tell me privately that they knew the person who they were voting for was not experienced, was not qualified, and a couple people said too old. That's not my words, their words. But he's my friend, and I just want to vote for him. Well, I've got friends that I like, but if I needed open heart surgery, I'm not going to choose them to be my surgeon. I'm not going to choose them to be an expert in something that they don't know anything about just because they're my friends. But you'd be surprised how often I would hear that excuse. I also would hear, well, he or she has lived here for so long, as if you're having roots in a particular area make you qualified to hold elected office there. I also heard, well, it's his turn or it's her turn now, meaning that this person has either run unsuccessfully a number of times or they've given enough money to the particular party that the party deems, okay, it's their turn now because they've fed us some money. That's what that often means. And it's like, okay, once again, this is not a joke. This is not some board game where you roll the dice and it's someone's turn, although voting in America does seem to be more and more that these days. I also heard a person say, well, my daughter used to work for this candidate, and hey, what does that mean? I mean, I think we've all worked for incompetent, clueless people at some point in our lives. Does that mean we want them to be elected to run the government? So those were some actual stories I heard or reasons for voting. That's the first category of the sentimental reasons. So now I'll talk about the group of people who don't vote just for a number of reasons, and here they go. And like I said before, these are usually white people. They are often male, typically young, but not always. The first group I'll call the rebel. These were people who told me that they don't want to participate in the system, and so they've never voted. I ran into so many people, even people in their 60s, who have never registered to vote. And some of these looked like, I'll just make that perception that I could have seen them, they're baby boomers, okay? They're baby boomers. They don't vote, and they pride themselves in it as if they're some kind of rebel, kind of like, oh, I'll show them, I'm not going to participate. Which makes me think of a kid saying he's going to show them and by running away or hold his breath until he turns blue. Seems pretty immature to me. And then there was a young man that I know him through, I won't say how I know him because that might kind of identify him, but he struck me as have his head on straight and, smart guy. He's, going to school, going to college and everything. And he astonished me about saying that he doesn't vote, but he didn't say it that, forthrightly. I was asking him about the election and what he thought about the candidates and everything, and he said it was something like, "Oh, I don't do that," or it wasn't even that clear. It was I don't think about that or something. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, you're saying you don't vote, right? And he seemed pretty embarrassed, but he said, yeah. And I said, well, why don't you vote? Well, first I cleared with him. I said, my people died for the vote, right? Because, he's young. I figured maybe he doesn't know history. I said, my people died. And he said, oh, yeah. I said, some of your people died. He said, yeah. I said, well, why on earth don't you vote? And he said that he felt overwhelmed by the choices, and he didn't understand the issues, and he couldn't figure out who's the right one, and doing the research was overwhelming to him, and he didn't want to make the wrong choice. He's confused. So to me, I think think that's a cop-out. It's like, well, hey, get informed. Make a choice. Get out there, take the risk, if you will. But sitting back and doing nothing and saying you don't understand the issues just doesn't make any sense to me for a person that is, in all other purposes, he's got a little career going. He seems like a thoughtful, intelligent person. So what is this about, not understanding or being overwhelmed by the facts? So anyway, that was that. And then there are the people who are kind of the purist. They would say, oh, no one that's running is good enough, so I don't want to play. They're just not good enough, so I'm not going to contaminate myself by getting involved with the process. And they, the purists, are related to the ones who are cynical, who kind of say, well, what's the use? There's no one good running, or they're corrupt, or they will be corrupted, and everything. And they're kind of related to the purist, I think. And I'll be honest with you, I can understand where they're coming from, because looking at the political environment in our country these days, you just really have to wonder sometimes, and I hate to say this, kind of what's the point? But that said, I'm not going to stop voting. So we need to wrap this up. These have been some kind of wild and woolly thoughts I've had, but informed observations. And these are encounters I've had with the public around the subject of voting. I'd like to say I was inspired, but between the deep corruption of the two-party system and the checked-out public, we're in deep trouble. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Valley Views. I'm your host, Dale Holliday, and I'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, ideas for future topics, or other matters you would like explored. Email me at valleyviews@kboo.org. That's VALLEYVIEWS@kboo.org. Special thanks to Chad Howard from Corvallis Access Media for his technical assistance and support. I look forward to being with you again next time. And remember, as Doctor Who once said, I'm not in charge, but I'm full of ideas. Bye!